Happy Veterans Day to all my fellow vets out there. Today is Veterans Day in the United States. It's celebrated annually on November 11th, and it honors military veterans who have served in the armed forces. The history of the observance goes all the way back to World War I, when major hostilities were formally ended with the Treaty of Versailles on June 28, 1919. However, the fighting had already ceased with an armistice on November 11th, 1918, at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. This day was initially observed as Armistice Day. In 1938, November 11th was officially recognized as a federal holiday in the United States. It was dedicated to world peace and honoring World War II veterans. However, after World War II and the Korean War, there was a movement to make the day honor all veterans, not just those who served in World War I and Korea. So in 1954, the holiday was renamed Veterans Day to recognize veterans from all branches and all conflicts. Today, Veterans Day is a time to recognize the sacrifices of those who have served and to appreciate the diversity within the ranks of the military. People from all backgrounds, from all walks of life, have contributed to the nation's defense, making it a day for the country to come together in gratitude. Since the election's over now, this is a good time for us to come together, and this is a good common topic to do so. I also want to talk about my own recent experience with something that was on my mind today for Veterans Day. So this past weekend, I was asked to be a judge at the Tumbleweed Foundation, which is a group that does charity work, and one of the charities that they work with is called the Treacher-Collins Syndrome Awareness. Treacher-Collins is a very debilitating disease. It causes severe deformation of facial features and hearing loss, and it is a very, very bad disease, but it's very rare. And therefore, there's not a lot of focus on it amongst our pharmaceutical community, and there's really no cure for it. It's genetic. There's things you can do to ameliorate some of the damages that are caused or some of the defects that are caused by it, but it's not something you can cure. So it's a really bad disease, and I was really happy to be part of it. The reason why I mention that, because I do a lot of charity work, a lot of it mostly for veterans, and I was asked to do this because I am a veteran, and it was held at the American Legion out in, where was it held? In Floral Park, New York, not that far from the city where I am. So I went out there, and I went into the hall, and it was like a throwback in time. You know, my father was a vet, and when we were growing up as kids, we used to go to the VFW in our town. In almost every town, even the smallest towns like mine, 11,000 people, we had a VFW, we had an American Legion, we had all these very good groups, Lions Club, that they did a lot of charity work. They were really good groups. They really reached out to families and helped, and particularly in poor communities where I lived. You could never afford, if you got married, to go rent a hall or a restaurant or something like that. Most people got married in their own home, or there was or the VFW or the American Legion. Some of these, that's where these weddings were held, because they could afford to rent the hall, and all the family members and friends would make the food, okay? They don't make the food there and bring in the alcohol or whatever they're gonna drink. So it was a community thing. Weddings were basically, everyone brought something. And therefore you can throw a wedding for a few $100s. You probably had to pay the priest, but maybe that was about it. And that's it. That's how I had my wedding. When I got married in my sister's backyard. My mother and sisters made all the food, and I think I sprung for $40 for $30 for a keg of beer, and that was it. But I had 100 people there, and it was a really good time. It was in my sister's backyard, and that was the best we could afford. I was in the military at the time. There's no way I was going to have one of these extravagant weddings. Today, the weddings have become such a big business. But anyway, back to the story. So I went in there, and I thought I was walking into a time warp. It would look just like the places that I grew up with. All the family and friends were there, kids were there, vets were there, old vets, young vets. And it was great, the old wood flooring, and the fold-out chairs and fold-out tables, and all the pictures of all the vets on the wall. It was beautiful. There was a TV in the corner for somebody to watch the sports, and a little bar. It was great. And so I I was the judge for the rib eating contest they hold every year as part of raising the money for this charity, and they needed a vet. And strangely enough, they're hard to come by these days, older vets at these places. I was surprised. I didn't realize that. So I did a little research, and I realized that, wow, and by the way, the guy that was there running it told me, he goes, I'm the last guy. He goes, when I die, there's no one going to run this place. We're going to end up having to sell the building. I can't find anyone to take over for me. I took over for another guy who just passed away about 5 years ago, and I've been doing it for 5 years. And I said, really? There's no young vets in there? He goes, no, they're not joining us. And I'm saying, wow, why is that? He goes, I don't know. Maybe it's the different generations, such a big gap between us, boomers and the young vets from the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Maybe they don't see it the same way. I don't know. We've reached out to them. We're just having a hard time recruiting. So I looked up the stats, and they've lost over 1 million members, like in the last decade, mostly obviously because the World War II, Korean War, even the Vietnam vets. My cohort is starting to die off. We're getting old. And the younger guys are not replacing us at these organizations, which is very tragic because they're very, very community oriented, and they really help. If you look at the suicide rates today, about 20 a day for our vets. That's an incredible number. I don't recall that being anywhere near that post-World War II and even post-Vietnam. And those two cohorts, and in Korean War, those 3 cohorts actually of vets has suffered traumatic. Those wars are very tough. Far more casualties in all of those wars than the 20 years of the Gulf Wars, even though 20 years is probably the longest foreign war that we've been involved with. And truly those guys have suffered tremendously, the types of trauma that they've gone through. But these organizations are what help the past generations of vets keep their minds and keep their souls and keep their families and communities together. So I just want to say to the younger guys, hey, there's a home. There's a home for you. And whatever why you're not being part of it, I don't know. If you've got other organizations, I know there's a few other organizations out there that are more inclined to be maybe appropriate for you. There's the Afghanistan and Iraqi organizations and some other ones. But I think we should try to get these things all merged together so that each town has at least one solid, if not 2 solid organizations that can cater to the needs of the vets and their families. And the other thing we may want to do is that maybe I think there's a possibility we're not reaching out to our women veterans enough, include them. They may not feel like it's a place for women, like a men's club, because that's what they more or less were in the early days, because most of the vets from the Vietnam, World War II, and Korea were male. However, I will tell you, having been around those were not male organizations. They were male run for everyone. And it was for families. Okay, there was families and children and women were participating. Everybody participated in making it happen because it's a volunteer organization. They don't make money. And anyway, I just want to reach out to our vets. Let's get together on Veterans Day. Let's reach out to each other. The older guys, reach out again to the young guys. They need help. And young guys, hey, reach out to us older guys, or at least come around. You might be surprised what it's like to go to a VFW or American Legion. If you haven't been there, you should go. It's a great place, and I was reminded yesterday of how much I miss it, and I'm clearly going to participate more. I've been participating more. I've been to a few events. I've been to the parade last year out on the island, and I intend to be part of all of these communities again, because I know how valuable they are to our veterans. And not only that, but they're a value to our country, because they are the ones that set the tone for empathy, morality, family values, support, love of America. And it's not political, okay? It's not political. So let's keep politics out of it. The election's over, and let's get back to healing and get back to supporting our veterans and all people in America. God bless. Happy Veterans Day.